Do you think that buying a vehicle with a reputation for reliability is going to keep you from ever having to worry about it breaking down? Well, that's a lie. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the 4 variables that can make even the most dependable vehicles in the world still break down. But first, what do Toyota trucks, the Mercedes W123, and the 7.3 Ford Power Stroke have in common? Yeah, they're known for their legendary reliability, but that's not it. What they have in common is that they all still break down. No vehicle is invincible. As a matter of fact, I would like to introduce you to somebody. He goes by the name Stranded Tim, and you can find him sitting on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck in his super reliable Toyota Tacoma.
So here's what's going on here today. Tacoma's broke. Left my wife stranded on her way to the grocery store. I know what the problem is. It's just the bolt that holds the alternator onto the engine broke off inside the bracket, and so I can't just put a new bolt in there. I have to drill it out. Not a big deal, but not exactly something I can fix on the side of the road. And so here I am waiting for a tow truck. I sent my wife and the 4Runner home to go and pick up our little guy, and I'm taking one for the team here. Disclaimer already, people. Still a diehard Toyota fan over here, even though my my Monday's not going great so far.
To help visualize the likelihood of a breakdown, I have 3 glasses here of Toyota Super Long Life coolant. The full one here represents an unreliable vehicle, like a Land Rover. Sorry, Land Rover people. Pretty darn likely to leave you stranded at some point, right? The middle one here represents a vehicle with average reliability, like say a Ford F-150. It's not unreliable, not super reliable. And lastly, this one represents a super reliable vehicle like a Toyota truck. The older ones, not the new ones, not touching that one. The likelihood of a breakdown is far, far less, but as you can see, it's still not quite 0. It's pretty obvious to see how the odds of being stranded in any one of these vehicles stack up, but it's not actually quite that simple. These 4 glasses represent the different variables that can be added to any one of these 3 vehicles that'll increase the chances of it breaking down. Variable number 1 is the environment that the vehicle lives in.
You know, I've had different things come up on my Toyota trucks. I own 2 of the most reliable Toyota trucks on the planet, and they've been great overall. But they have had their little issues here and there. I'm not going to lie and say that they've been completely flawless, because they haven't. And one of the things that is coming to mind right now is I had a brake line break on the 4Runner before, and also when my wife was driving. Is that a manufacturer defect? Is that a problem? Is that Toyota's fault? Does it mean that it was a badly made vehicle? No, none of the above. It's a product of the environment that it's living in. We're in Ontario here. Things get rusty.
Some more examples of this. I've also had a power steering line rust out on my 4Runner. I've had a rotten fuel tank strap on the Tacoma here. And I've had a few brake calipers seize up as well. Not necessarily the manufacturer's fault though. Or what if you live in an area that gets super cold in the wintertime? Repetitive cold starts can cause damage on even the best designed engines. If you live in the desert, the intense UV rays from the sun can cause your paint to fail. Either your clear coat dries out and kind of blisters like this, or your paint can actually delaminate from the panel and just flake off. So how can you keep the environment that your vehicle lives in from affecting its reliability? Well, basically, you just gotta do whatever you can to protect it as much as possible. If you live in a salty area where rust is a big concern, get your undercarriage oil sprayed regularly. For all of you desert folks, protect your paint with a sealant or a ceramic coating or even paint protection film. And if nothing else, make sure that you try to park in the shade as much as possible. And for the folks in the extreme cold, use a block heater and plug your vehicle in overnight so that there's not as much strain on your engine during those cold starts. After a brief ride with a friendly young dude in a flatbed, it was time to take a closer look at what had failed on the Tacoma. I was having a bad day, but on the bright side, my little guy got to watch a tow truck with flashing lights in his very own driveway.
This is what's going on. This is the bolt that holds the alternator here onto this bracket on the engine. So you can see right now it's got no tension on the belt, it's just hanging there. This is supposed to go into that bracket right there. I believe it's broken off inside there, which sucks. So we have to get the old bolt out and I guess drill and tap it and put a new one in. I'm very concerned with breaking this tab off of the engine. I do not want to deal with that. Well, I think I finally gained enough access to be able to get a drill in here to work on the bolt that is broken off right in here. So I had to disconnect this tranny cooler line off of the rad to get that out of the way, and then I actually had to take the whole oil filter housing off in order to be able to just fit a drill down in here to be able to actually work on that broken bolt in there. So I think made some good progress.
Variable number 2, a previous owner's faulty repairs. The choices that your vehicle's previous owner made can affect the reliability of it in the long run. Think about it, as soon as you replace a part with something from the parts store, your vehicle is no longer 100% Toyota. Sometimes people will replace expensive but higher quality Toyota parts with something much cheaper in order to save money. And sometimes that decision comes back to bite you. Another great example is an engine being rebuilt for whatever reason. Part of what makes the 2UZ V8 and these 4Runners so special is the fact that they were all built in Japan. So if Backyard Billy decides to do a redneck rebuild on it while he's half in the bag, that engine is no longer the same as one that was assembled by Toyota and passed all of their quality control checks. Hopefully Backyard Billy did a good job, but you can never know for sure. I believe that this is the variable that caused our Tacoma to fail on us. I've talked to multiple mechanic friends about this, and they all say the same thing. How the heck would an alternator bolt just break off due to wear and tear? It's not like it's a suspension component that sees a bunch of impacts and a bunch of stress. It just sits there. I even had one guy who was a Toyota mechanic for 14 years tell me that he had never seen or even heard of a Tacoma having this problem before. Guess I'm just lucky, huh? Or maybe something else happened here. Did the previous owner break the bolt off when they were trying to replace the alternator, and since it's so difficult to fit a drill in there to drill it out, they just kind of left the old bolt in the threads and tightened up the remaining bolt as much as they could? Or is this supposed to be a heavier grade bolt and they just put a weaker one in when they were changing the alternator? Regardless, it caused my super reliable truck to leave us on the side of the road, and this scenario can happen to any other vehicle. Previous owners can make reliable vehicles unreliable. Now listen, buying a reliable vehicle does not let you off the hook when it comes to performing maintenance. You still gotta look after it. This Tacoma has over 340,000 kilometers on the clock, and while the 4-liter V6 is a super solid engine, if we had gone this entire time without ever performing an oil change, this engine would probably be blown up by now. Keeping all your fluids clean is really important if you want to be able to rely on your vehicle. It's also important to stay on top of timing belt replacements on vehicles like these V8 4Runners. If the belt breaks and it's an interference engine, I can't blame it blowing up on metal shavings left behind due to the manufacturing process. Now, with that said, with reliable vehicles like these, you can certainly get away with neglecting maintenance a lot more than you can with other vehicles. My old Grand Cherokee's 4-wheel drive system would bind like crazy if I didn't put the exact perfect fluid in the transfer case. These things are a lot more forgiving, but that doesn't mean that maintenance isn't important. It's an easy way to increase the odds of being able to count on your vehicle. By the way, with 4 vehicles here at our household, I'm finding it difficult to stay on top of tracking oil changes and tire rotations and stuff like that. So I'm working on developing some kind of a maintenance tracker to make life a little bit easier. So let me know if that's something you might be interested in buying, and comment below if you have a way of tracking your maintenance that you highly recommend. I'm curious to hear it. Now, I know you guys would never do something like this, but there are some people out there that seem to think that because a vehicle is reliable, it can withstand any kind of abuse that they dish at it. We all saw the episode of Top Gear where they tested the Toyota Hilux and it continued to start every single time no matter what they did to it. But let's be real here. Yes, the truck technically started up and drove after all that, but do you really think that you would be able to hop in it and daily drive it for like the next 5 years without it ever breaking down? Of course not. No matter how rugged a vehicle may be, they all have their breaking point. The more you push the limits, the higher the chance is of you reaching that breaking point. So remember that just because you have a 4x4 truck doesn't make you BJ Baldwin and make it so that you can jump off loading docks and slam into curbs on a regular basis. And holding your Infiniti G35 on the rev limiter for a half an hour just to impress the takeover kids with the broccoli hair is for sure going to shorten the life of your engine. So if you want your car to last forever, be kind to it, will you? Now we can add any or all of these variables to these 3 vehicles, and just like the fluid level, the chances of them breaking down is going to increase. This poor Land Rover is going to overflow soon, I'm afraid. Watch what happens with this reliable glass though. It's still not as high as the middle vehicle, but it's certainly not down near 0 anymore either. Now it's within this difference here where things start to break down. It's at this point where even reliable vehicles can leave you stranded. Just like my beloved Tacoma. Even some of the most reliable vehicles on the planet will still suffer the odd breakdown from time to time. Just like when Tank the pit bull unexpectedly bites your nose off right after the owner claims, "Don't worry, he's never attacked anybody before." It might take 300,000 kilometers for your beloved Toyota to finally let you down. Just because it's never failed before doesn't mean that it never will. Regardless of its track record, there's always a chance that something can cause it to randomly act in a way that it never has before. So try not to have a false sense of security. It's important to be prepared for anything to happen no matter what. Hopefully you don't have to ever use those tools on the side of the road, but it's important to have them with you just in case. And no, I'm not against pit bulls as a breed, but pit bull, chihuahua, whatever, it doesn't matter. Keep your dog out of my kid's face. The lesson here is to still buy a well-known, reliable vehicle, but buy a good one that's been cared for right from the beginning. Stay on top of maintenance and protect it from the elements as much as possible. Kind of tangy. Not bad though.